people always talk about TV shows with friends. They always talk about films with friends, music with friends,
Mhm.
books, like full-on books with friends. People don't really discuss comic books,
No,
despite so many people reading them.
there's kind of this like, I guess in a way, a stigma that they are more for kids than as, but also understood that adults do read them and collect them. But then it's like you don't discuss about that as an adult sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And also part of the problem is if someone talks about a book to you, you go, "Oh, what happened in the book?" They explain the book to you. Yeah, it's 600 pages long, but it's still got a story. It's a beginning, a middle, and end. Comics are different. It's like this ongoing soap. So, like people from the UK, we've got Coronation Street,
Mm.
EastEnders, Emmerdale. They've been going on for 30 years, and we all know if you sat down and you didn't miss an episode of EastEnders for 2 or 3 weeks, you'd be caught up. You'd be good to go. You know what was going on,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how comics work. At any time, you can start in a serial and just start reading. The first few issues, you might be missing little bits of information, but then you'll be right into what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, people still find it really difficult to get into them and understand what's going on, or even where to start. So I sat down, I had to think about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've worked out what the problem with comics is.
Okay.
So we've got to start off with the issues.
Yes.
So for the most part, the characters that everyone knows are incredibly old and long-running characters.
Mm-hmm.
And these characters are interconnected with so many other characters. You've got these massive sagas spanning 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
which makes them inherently intimidating.
Yes.
Just like no one will take up reading Game of Thrones lightly because there's
No.
just so many books.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's intimidating to people, let alone 60 years of back history, as well as because it was people who enjoyed it initially were looked down on. Some of them people now gatekeep it slightly, which is also a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to this, for one comic book character, like a Batman, there can be dozens of comic book lines all releasing simultaneously, which make it even more confusing as to know what's going on. So
Yeah. And
just
which one to pick?
as an example, currently in print serials for Batman.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Batman,
Mm-hmm.
Batman Incorporated, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Batman White Knight presents Generation Joker,
Right.
Batman and Superman World's Finest, and also Detective Comics.
Yeah. Okay. I'm already lost.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If you wanted to start reading Batman comics, where the fuck do you start there?
Yeah.
So the hilarious thing is the original Batman serial that would be classed as the one
Yeah.
would be Detective Comics.
Right.
Because that's where he made his first appearance, and that's where he's been running. And Detective Comics is on an issue 1100 or whatever.
Yeah. So then, because to be honest, you probably would, as someone from the outside would probably go, whatever is just the Batman or like the Batman and Joker one, because like, oh, I know Joker.
Yeah,
Everything else is like, I don't know.
exactly. So if you're a Batman fan, which one do you collect? Are you expected to collect all of them? At which point you're going, "Wow, that's a huge
Yeah.
investment." If each of them are once a month, you've got what, 8 issues a month just of Batman that are between £1 to £3. What, like 15 to 30 quid a month just on comics when you're not even sure if you need all of them.
Yeah.
You're going to get someone who's like tempted to dip their toe in, who sees that and just goes, "No, I'm out. I'm done."
Yeah.
Um, which is obviously a big problem. Um, and the reasons that these issues exist is due to the nature of characters like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Hulk. These characters are so old and so well known. Eventually, you're going to get these creative people coming in who want to take the character in a different direction. They want
Yes.
to try a darker Superman, a darker Spider-Man, maybe a brighter, more funny Batman that's different from what people expect.
Yeah.
Um, and while the editors of Marvel and DC are going to be like, "Okay, I'm interested, let's try it," there's someone who might want to see that. They're not going to want to change your DC, your Detective Comics, your The Amazing Spider-Man line, the Action Comics for Superman. They don't want to take these long-running lines that are
No.
8, 9, 1,000 issues in, and just take the character in a whole new direction.
Hmm.
So what do? They
Start a
create
new
these
one.
mini series.
Yeah.
They create these side series like the Spectacular Spider-Man. They give us the Ultimate Spider-Man. And then well, Johnny's got to do the Ultimate Spider-Man. I want to do Ultimate Wolverine. I want to do Ultimate Captain America. Before you know it, you have the Ultimate Universe, where Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are still brother and sister, but they're also in a romantic relationship. And you get this universe which is completely different, and everyone's like, "Whoa, what the fuck is going on over there?"
Yeah.
And it gets even more confusing
Yeah.
because then you
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about these things and you go, "Oh, remember that comic where Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were getting it on?"
And
And
you're
everyone
like,
assumes that happened in the main universe, and it didn't.
yeah.
And it makes it even more convoluted and confusing when people go, "I have no way of catching up on this."
I know.
Um,
It's wild.
yeah, and on top of that, you'll get mini series. So this big story that's 8 issues long. It's only ever going to be 8 issues long. That's not a problem. But then people don't know what that's canon to. Is that canon to the DC? Is it canon to the Detective Comics? Is it canon to like
Yeah.
the main continuity? Or is it just
It's still completely
short,
standalone.
or is it just like a little Elseworld story?
Hmm.
Um and it can make it difficult, especially when potentially you then have a mini series that's not just a Batman miniseries, but it could be a Batman and Martian Manhunter miniseries. It could be a Spider-Man and X-Men crossover.
Yeah.
And then you've got to worry about, I mean, the X-Men teams and their continuity and all of their characters, and it can get really tricky. So, how do we fix it? What are the solutions, and how do you get into comics if you want to give comics a try? So, things have been tried. DC and Marvel haven't just gone fuck the lot of you. DC attempted to tidy their universes up with a new 52,
Hmm.
and then tried again with Rebirth a few years later. But some people might argue that makes them even more confusing long term because they didn't work. And now you go to Google a character like I do for our character profiles.
Hmm.
And as I say at the beginning of all of our character profiles surrounding DC characters that I'm not as confident on, I'll go, some of this information may have changed as part of the new 52 or Rebirth, and it
Yeah.
might have been different beforehand. Again, which can be another blocker to entry.
Well, yeah, because then you don't know where to start. Like
Exactly.
how far back.
Um, so maybe that's not the perfect solution then. So then you look at what Marvel have done with The Amazing Spider-Man, which is what started back in 1962 or
Hmm.
66 with Stanley and Steve Ditko. Um, so what they do is every time they've got a new writer taking over the Amazing Spider-Man series, they restart at number 1 to try and
Right.
create an entry point for people. But they still keep a legacy number on it. So it'll have the big number on it, which will be number 1.
Hmm.
And then it will be underneath, it will say LGY number. So Spider-Man's at number 914 or whatever at the minute, legacy. But in this writer's run, number 20, for
Right.
instance.
Okay.
So that makes it a bit easier. But it's
Yeah.
still daunting. You're like, do I need to go back and read all 913 issues? Do I need to buy the big Spider-Man volume omnibus? That book there, next
Yeah.
to the Invincible one that's only covers the first 100 issues or whatever? Do I need to buy all of them at 100 quid a pop? So
Yeah.
maybe that's not perfect. So it's not easy.
No, it's not an easy task.
And there are far too many blockers keeping people out of it. So there is no perfect solution, which is a huge issue. If there's anyone smarter than me that wants to get in a call and we'll discuss this for hours to try and find the perfect solution, hit me up. But what I think Marvel and DC really need to work hard at is
Hmm.
on their websites a clear idea of what's going on.
Yes.
Earth 616 is Marvel's main continuity. So you go, okay, I want stuff in their main continuity. Earth 616.
Hmm.
And that shows you all of the continuous comic lines that are currently going on in Earth 616.
Yeah.
Who's writing it? What's going on? Who's involved in that story? Go. Cool. And then maybe for the other universities where there's a couple of bits going on, they can have stuff there as well. But what if you just care about a character? You don't care about the bigger picture. You just want to read a Batman comic.
Yeah.
Okay. You go to DC, you go Batman, and it shows you the Batman, the Brave and the Bold detective comics, and you're like, okay, I don't know what one of these I want to read. And it gives you a little synopsis.
Mhm.
Synopsis, is that the right word? Who
I
gives a
think
fuck?
so.
Of what that kind of comic is about. So, for instance, the Batman comic line
Hmm.
is more about Bruce Wayne and Batman and the more comic book action. Whereas
Yeah.
Detective Comics is more about Batman and the Bat family. So you get more crossover from other characters, and Batman might not even be in an issue of it because Detective Comics covers the entire Bat fam. And it's more about the detective side of it. So, like,
Yeah.
when there's a fight scene, it's a bit more important
Yeah, I get you.
because it doesn't happen as often. It's more about the detective work and the intelligence of Batman and the interaction between the Bat fam members. And maybe that's more what you want. So then you can look at it and go, okay, cool. There's 12 million different Batman comic lines.
Hmm.
What one is what do I? Do you just want like a silly, goofy one where it's gonna be wacky stuff? Maybe they can just go. Here's the one where we're trying stuff. Go see what you think.
Yeah.
Again, that still relies on people knowing what they want, which isn't easy. But at least then, if someone does know that they want to read a Batman comic or a Spider-Man comic, or they want to know what's going on in the main universe, it's going to be easier for them to find it.
I have an idea.
Go on.
So there's two ways, like playing off the things that you just said. I think the idea of having like a you're able to go, I don't know, you pick right, Marvel. I want to read Spider-Man. And it's like, do you want and it asks you, do you want the current main continuity, like the main one, and it's like if you're like, yes, it's like cool, here you go. This is the latest one in the main amazing Spider-Man storyline that's been going on forever. And it gives you the current, and then you can also see like we're on episode 20, here's the first 19 as well that go with that. Or if you're like, no, it then goes, okay, do you want it should ask you more questions. Like they need to come up with something of like, if you're new to comic books and you go to the website, it's like, are you new to reading comic books? And you're like, oh yes. And it takes you through like a questionnaire essentially. For like doing it with the Batman example, you could be like, okay, what sort of Batman would you be into? Just Batman, Bat Family, Detective Batman, or Batman and villains. So it's
Yeah.
like all the wacky ones with all the villains. Someone clicks that and it takes you to the right set of comics that relate to that.
It
They need
almost
to,
needs to be a third party doing it, so that they're not trying
yeah,
to. They don't have an interest in what you end up buying. They're just like, okay, let's help you here.
yeah,
Um, but at the end of the day, how I got into comics was a headache, and that's how I know how much of a headache it is, and and why it took me so long. Um, but what it came from was seeing on Twitter people already in the know talking about how, oh, it looks like this film is being adapted from this story.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, I want to know more about that. So I go and find, so like the Civil War story, for instance, when Civil War got announced as a film,
Yes.
everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to see how they adapt that. And I'm like, wait, that was a comic? So I went
Hmm.
and bought the fucking Civil War comic. It's up there somewhere.
Well,
So
here's a
here's the
great
thing. Yeah, the
example.
arcs will occasionally be put into these slightly bigger books,
Hmm.
which can be, depending on the size of it, obviously, can be 20, £30. And it's an entire story. And the comics inside of it for like the bigger events. So like the Civil War stories took place over different characters,
Hmm.
comic book lines.
Yeah.
They weren't all just like Civil War. It might have been Spider-Man Civil War, Iron Man Civil War, but they all get put in this one book together as a Civil War story, and it has everything you need to know in it to read that story. That's a really good way to get in the habit of reading comics, and then from that you'll go, okay, I think I get how this all works. I
Hmm.
feel a bit braver now in going into trying to find a series I want to follow.
Well, you bringing up Civil War has reminded me back when that got announced, because that was, let's be honest, that's a while ago now.
Yeah, it's
I remember
10
I had a
years ago.
friend who he was like, oh, I remember reading them comics. this is going to be super cool and super interesting. I remember back then looking into, oh, maybe I should start getting into the comics for the MCU and stuff and like figuring out stuff. And being way too overwhelmed and being like, my brain eventually then never did it. To this day, like I've never really got into comics because there's just so like we've been saying, there's just so many options and it's just too much for me to like sit down and spend time to
Yeah,
figure out.
you are
Um,
absolutely right. Um,
Mentioning of
so
films though, and
go
I
on.
don't know if you're going to get onto this, but we saw it with DC recently, which I think is also a great way to help point people in the right direction of where to start. Is James Gunn was like, look, everyone, you're hyped about these, you're asking, this is what Superman's based on, this is what Supergirl's going to be based on. Here's some of the comics we've been leaning on. So then the casual fans that are liking the films go, oh, okay, I can go read the comics that are going to be about the film that I want to watch. If Marvel started doing the same, it's that first like easy like look, here is some options for you, so you don't have to figure out. You know what it relates to. They'll go read that, and then it's like, oh, now they can start venturing into these other things
Yeah,
further.
yeah. It's not easy.
No,
Um, and you do have to, unfortunately, at the moment, put a bit of time into it. What I will say is, if you go through that and you go, okay, I want a Batman series, Forbidden Planet. We have an affiliate link that's down below. That's
yeah,
what I use for all my subscriptions. I spent the time, I worked out what series I wanted to follow, I worked out what the series were. So now I get The Amazing Spider Man, Miles Morales Spider Man, The Flash, Detective Comics. There's other ones that I'm paying money for that I think I'm forgetting right now. And then they box them up together and they send them to me every month. And then I know I'm getting individual this issue and it will keep running. And because I've gone for the ones that are long running ones that aren't going to stop, I don't have to worry about it too much.
yeah,
And it makes it really handy. Um, but Marvel and DC, while they're probably laughing, counting all their money from all their films and all their TV shows, really, really need to work out how to make comics less intimidating and difficult to get into. And also, if you're really desperate and you're really intimidated, Google where your local comic book shop is
yeah, and go
and
talk
go
to them.
down and talk to the person behind the desk. I've been into maybe nearly 10 different comic book shops from different places. There are a couple where I live, but I've also seen other ones while out and about in the real world
Mm-hmm.
that I've popped into. I've never ever had someone who is not helpful, polite, and eager to help you find what you want.
Well, yeah,
They are some of the least intimidating people I've ever interacted with because they just know that comics are so much fun and so difficult to get into that if they can help you find what you're looking for, they will. And they will also order stuff in for you. If you're like, oh, I really wanted a Batman, I
mm.
really wanted to read this particular Batman story, and they don't have it there and then, they will order it in for you. And then you can go back and collect it.
Yeah. The like local shops are so good for that.
Exactly. Um, and for now, we've just got to do our best to find the comics we want to read. And then when you realize how much you love comics as well, join the fight in shouting at Marvel and DC for making it so difficult on us
Yeah, and I
newbies.
mean, like I mentioned, like hopefully James Gunn continues to recommend or like shout out which comics some of these films are based off because I think he will because DC will now have seen, oh, that was really good for us. Let's do that every time, and then hopefully Marvel follows suit.
It shows that there is a taste for comics when it's easy to know what you're looking for. When James Gunn's saying exactly what story by what writer is inspiring the
Mm.
stuff they're working on, sells out instantly on Amazon.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's be fair, they were for relatively they weren't Superman and Batman level characters. It was Supergirl, Booster Gold, characters that are quite well known and
Hmm.
people who know the names, but not your superstars. And everyone's like, okay, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, by this writer, that's what they're doing. Boom, mine.
Yeah, exactly. Like the fact they gave such specific examples of what they were leaning on. Like Marvel needs to take a page out of that book.
Exactly.